What's going on, guys? My name is Dustin, and this is Saturday Afternoon Wrestling, and it is a great day to talk about wrestling because though we are just 1 week removed from AEW All Out, it feels like 1,000 things have happened across both of the major wrestling companies, AEW, WWE. Feels like we have had like 3 or 4 weeks worth of stuff that has happened just in this week. So as always, it is a great, exciting time to be a wrestling fan. There is so much to enjoy, literally something for everyone. So we'll get to everything with AEW in a little bit. I'll start off running through the week in WWE news, Monday Night Raw, NXT, SmackDown's big debut on USA, the whole kit and caboodle. But before any of that, if I miss anything or if there's anything that you want to shout out, bring attention to, does not have to be WWE or AEW. It can be TNA, it can be New Japan, it can be anything that catches your eye that you want to highlight and shout out. I will put an email address in the description in the show notes if you listen to a podcast or watch on YouTube, or you can just hit the comments section. Honestly, whatever is easiest. I want to hear from people what they've been enjoying and what they've been watching. So let's get into Monday Night Raw, which again feels like it happened like 10 days ago, but was another really solid episode of Raw. I have a couple highlights here. The big highlight and the big advertised segment was that Bret the Hitman Hart would be returning to a WWE ring for a segment in the middle of Calgary, his hometown. So it had been a long time since Bret Hart had come out, and it was kind of like a who's going to be the person that comes out and gets the moment. And I kind of, for a second, thought it was going to be Drew McIntyre comes out to run down Bret Hart, and then CM Punk makes the save because of just how much everyone knows CM Punk loves Bret Hart. And that's probably why they didn't do it. It makes more sense to what they did anyways. They had Gunther come out and just lay into Bret Hart on the mic, including the incredible line, you were always my second favorite wrestler growing up. My favorite, though, was Bill Goldberg, which at this point, I guess it's just part of Bret Hart lore that everyone knows he hates Goldberg because the crowd, when Gunther said it, the crowd was like, oh man, like what?
Always be a close second to my actual favorite. And my all-time favorite is none other than Bill Goldberg.
And then Sami Zayn makes the save. Another Canadian native makes the save. And the match becomes official. Sami Zayn versus Gunther for the world title at, I believe, Bad Blood. So that card is shaping up nicely, very quick as well. But it was a really cool use of Bret Hart. It was nice to see him in the ring. It's always nice to see that reaction. And then piggybacking off of that Bret Hart moment and appearance, we got a Natalya reappearance, re-debut, return, whatever you want to call it. She had not been seen for a few months. She had apparently signed a new contract already, but there was all sorts of speculation that it had expired. She was exploring options. But she finally made her return in a 6-woman tag match where it's just cool to see her back. She's obviously one of the longest, if not the longest, tenured woman on the WWE roster now, and that experience and that repetition, that experience really is going to pay dividends as they start to put her in more matches with any of the call-ups, any of the younger stars. She is like the perfect person to have in there to know that you're going to have like a good, safe match. So very happy to see her back as well. Always nice to get that Heart music. Always nice to get the Canadian welcome home pop. There's just nothing like the hometown pop for someone, especially outside of the United States, I guess, when you see what Gunther gets, or Drew McIntyre, or Rhea Ripley, or Sami Zayn, or like any of these guys get these huge ovations, and it's just always a cool moment. Jey Uso won the Intercontinental title tournament, so he will get the opportunity to face Braun Breaker at Bad Blood, and that feels like a really good choice because Jey Uso just continues to stay like as over and as popular as just about anyone in the world in wrestling. He is so beloved. Putting him in these high notoriety matchups and these big championship situations is smart because everyone wants to see him win. I don't know if he will win here because it does feel like they're trying to really establish Braun Breaker with this run, but I wouldn't be opposed. I wouldn't hate Jey Uso finally getting a singles title. He's put in the work. I think he has shown that he is a main event player. They made it his nickname, like main event Jey Uso, and he has all the merch, he has everything. Like, so it feels like a good time to take advantage of that and to give him that after all of this hard work. I just don't see it coming at the expense of someone, still trying to establish themselves like Braun Breaker. So that either way is going to be an unbelievable match. And in that match, to determine the number one contender, we had an incredible moment where Bronson Reed came out of nowhere to drive Braun Strowman through a table and to take him out of the match and to open the door for Jey Uso to win. But when I say Bronson Reed came out and put Braun through a table, I do not mean he came out and picked him up and put him on the table and then jumped and did everything like normal when you think of a announce table spot. No. This man came out from the crowd, stood on the barricade in the timekeeper ring announcer area, and just essentially fell and jumped and fell onto Braun Strowman and drove him through the table long ways. It was crazy. It was out of nowhere. And I would have never thought a Bronson Reed Braun Strowman table spot could be described as something I never saw coming. But I truly, the way they shot it, the way it all played out was absolute perfection. And Bronson Reed continues to just build that credibility every single week as an absolute badass. And it's getting to the point where I don't think people are going to want to boo him if he keeps doing cool stuff like this. And finally, it's not as fun a note, but I do want to mention that WWE and Jackie Redmond ran a really nice tribute to the late Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau, two hockey players, Johnny Gaudreau of the Columbus Blue Jackets, who lost their lives in a drunk driving accident a few weeks ago. They were in Calgary, where Johnny Gaudreau played for, I believe, 7 or 8 of his first 10 years in the NHL, and just a terrible story all around. But I really appreciated the nuance that they put into it, and they showed the memorial out front. They showed all of the memorabilia and flowers and signs and everything that had been left. And it was a really nice touch. It was a nice acknowledgement of the news being in that city so soon after. And I really thought it was a super tasteful, well handled tribute. And I was kind of surprised when they first did it. And then I thought about, oh, well, I know Jackie Redmond has a lot of ties to the NHL. And so that kind of makes sense here. But I was really, really pleasantly surprised by how quickly it must have come together, the sincerity of it, and just that they would even do it. It showed a lot of thought. And that's something that, is always good. It's always good to see. We can always use more of that. We can always use more thought and heart. Just about in anything. Now, I don't know how to shift gears now from that, but NXT this week, we'll follow up Monday Night Raw with NXT, had the in-ring debut of Julia, who took on Chelsea Green in her first official WWE match, and it was great. It was a surprise because Chelsea Green got in a lot more offense than I expected. I kind of thought this would be a Julia squash, but the more it was going on, and the more they kind of had Julia continually having to pull out another move and go deeper into her bag, and here's another one, and here's another, the way they structured it and the way they had her keep doing that to kind of eventually just overwhelm Chelsea Green, I think was really smart, because now not only do you see everything that Julia has in her arsenal, but Chelsea Green is someone who I think people kind of sleep on everything she's done outside of WWE that kind of tends to come back up and trend every couple months. Every 6 months, her Lucha Underground match with Penta comes up, and people are like, "Oh my god, she does that!" So I really think that she was the perfect opponent, because she can do those crazy spots. She can do those crazy high work rate matches. She's such a gifted comedian. It really everything you want in a top wrestler. And so it made a lot of sense to put her in that spot, because then Julia gets an impressive first match that isn't just a 3 moves squash. And it was perfectly booked for me, and it is now made official as well. Julia Roxanne Perez on October 1st, the first night that NXT will be on the CW, which we also learned will feature Trick Williams taking on NXT champion Ethan Page. Trick Williams won a last man standing match versus Pete Dunne to get the win on Tuesday's NXT and to set that match up. There are a couple other matches announced so far as well for that first CW show. There's going to be a Zach Wesley 2. There's going to be a CM Punk appearance. CM Punk teased appearing next week on NXT as well to like run something by Julia or something, to pitch something was what they teased. So they are clearly stacking the deck for this first CW NXT. I think they said Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair will be there. The Miz will be there. Like, they're clearly trying to really pump the numbers. And the report that I read said that it was 1 million. They want 1 million viewers on that first NXT on the CW. Like, that is their goal, and they are clearly pushing towards that. But overall, as always, I cannot complain about NXT. Shawn Michaels has that show running like a Swiss watch. It's like the best 2 hours, the most consistent 2 hours, I think, in wrestling that I watch every week. Always love NXT, just about. So really, really cool stuff coming up with them, moving to CW and getting that huge exposure bump. So we will see what the next couple weeks hold as we continue to get to that, now that so many things have already been laid out. It's kind of interesting. We'll see, what the Trick Ethan Page feud looks like for 2 weeks, or the Julia Roxanne feud. We know Stephanie Vaquer is somewhere close by as well. Like, her debut is imminent. So there are a ton of moving parts, and it feels like it's all happening at the perfect time. Like, all of this NXT buzz is happening. Of course it's by design, but it's happening right around this huge move, and they've really just laid their cards out and set everything up, I think, really nicely. And then Friday, we had the big debut of SmackDown on the USA Network. This is a big deal. SmackDown had been off of USA, I think, the entire time it's been on. It's been it's been UPN 13 or Fox most recently. I think it had a stint on Sci-Fi. I know Raw was on Spike. They move around all the time, but I think this is the first time SmackDown has been on USA as well. And they clearly loaded the show. The show started with a Cody Rhodes Solo Sikoa Universal title match in a steel cage. Like, that was the first match. And it featured, of course, the Bloodline interfering, but it also featured, how can you have a SmackDown debut on a major network like USA for the first time without including Roman Reigns? Roman Reigns made an appearance, made the save for Cody Rhodes, and then we were off and running with the rest of the show, which, very good matches on this show. The Mishin, Piper Niven match was a bummer because I think it was like 2 minutes long. Like, it was super short, which was disappointing because those are two women that work very well. Like, they're very high work rate wrestlers. So it's disappointing to not see them get more time, but we did get the 5th installment in Carmelo Hayes versus Andrade. If you have not seen any of the matches that they have had leading up to this one, or didn't watch this one, do it. Just watch them all. These guys are absolutely going out there on free TV every week and putting on a show. I don't know what it is about the two of them. Their chemistry is so perfect, but it is incredible. So they had another great match. Andrade is now 3-2 in the best of 5. Who knows if it's going to be a best of 7 moving forward, or if this was the cap. But either way, it's always a pleasure to see those guys wrestle, and them wrestling each other is just like, it's a recipe for success. And every match has had a different vibe to it, I think, which is even more impressive when you consider how short a time Andrade has been back with the company and Carmelo Hayes has been on the main roster. Just everything about it is the type of stuff that I like to see. So then, with the Cody Rhodes Solo Sikoa match happening to kick off the show, it's a lot of question, what could the main event be? And the main event ended up being a segment where Nick Aldis and Roman Reigns discussed a tag team match where Roman Reigns would take on Jacob Fatu and Solo Sikoa, and they wanted Cody Rhodes to be his partner. The Bloodline attacks. Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes stand tall, and Cody finally agrees. So our Bad Blood main event looks to be Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes teaming up to take on Jacob Fatu and Solo Sikoa. And that is a crazy move, because I didn't think we would get here with the two of them having to come together until after whatever was going to happen with the Bloodline, with the original Bloodline. I guess that's my fault, because it is September 13th right now that I'm recording this, and Bad Blood, obviously the next pay-per-view, and then Survivor Series is not until November. And I'm sure the thought here is Survivor Series, Bloodline versus Bloodline. So really, it's on me for thinking that they would get to that so quickly. Obviously, with Bad Blood, they were going to want something else. I'm just kind of surprised because it felt like that was more like the end result of everything, was getting to that point where Cody and Roman have to come together. Overall, though, I did really like SmackDown. I liked the new presentation. I think the new song, I think it's Never Lost by Meg the Stallion. I can't remember the exact name of the song, but I think it's Never Lost. But I enjoyed the new graphics. I enjoyed the song. I think it overall works really well for the presentation. But let me know, did you like it? Did you not like it? It seems like a consensus is that people did not like it, is what I've seen mostly online. But let me know. Hit the comments what you thought about SmackDown's intro. And really just what you thought about the first show on USA overall. Like, is this going to be something that feels like a big step up? Is it going to be like, it's hard to go from something like Fox that's so legitimate back to USA for broadcasting, like, and have it feel of the same quality. But this really did. I think that's a testament to all of the creative and all of the superstars, that nothing was lost in the move. So I mean, that's at least how I took it. So I have a lot of optimism moving forward. And then an interesting thing too is they do this deal and SmackDown moves to USA. Raw is obviously moving to Netflix at the start of 2025. They announced that Raw is going to stay on USA from October to December, but it will be 2 hours long instead of 3. And this is supposedly part of a deal that was negotiated to keep Raw on USA for these last few months, because their contract actually expires at the end of September. So this is like the buffer months before they move to Netflix. And I think it's interesting that a key to that would be that they cut it to 2 hours instead of 3. I don't know what that means for the Netflix show, if that's going to be a 2 hour thing and this is just kind of to get people ready for it, or if it really was just a condition for staying on and extending the deal a couple months. But with a 2 hour Raw, I'm even more interested to see what it looks like when Triple H has to like tighten things up. And I hope when I say that, that is like, I hope it is not, okay, now instead of 3 Judgment Day segments and 2 matches, we're gonna get 3 Judgment Day segments and 1 match. Like, I hope it's more split and spread out evenly like that, almost like how NXT used to be when it was an hour and it was like, hey, we've gone 2 or 3 weeks without seeing the NXT like champion or top champions, so let's get them back on for an episode here or there. I really think it gives them an opportunity to continue to even further establish so many wrestlers, so many new wrestlers, and to really generate and build these storylines with real stakes behind them. So I'm curious to see what 2 Hour Raw looks like this October. I believe it is the first week of October. I think September 31st, honestly, might even be. I can't remember what they said. I should have wrote it down. I have everything else on my notes except that, but oh well. Just know, 2 Hour Raw coming in October, and it will be at least for the few months into January 2025. But who knows really exactly what Raw is going to look like on Netflix. And then finally, 2 more short things in the world of WWE. The Motor City Machine Guns have reportedly signed with WWE and will debut in NXT anytime now. The report is that they are going to debut on the October 1st CW NXT, because of course. It also wouldn't surprise me if they debuted them in 2 weeks and then have them challenge for the tag titles on that first show, or maybe it's like an open challenge type thing and they show up. Like obviously they're gonna want that that CW bump and that first big show bump for these guys. So I could see it really going either way, but that is a huge get for them on top of Stephanie Vaquer, Julia, and all of these signings they've been getting lately. It had felt like WWE was not like getting left behind in the world of signing free agents, but like they were missing out on so many, like again and again and again. And this run and the way they've utilized Julia so far, and you know, the hype even around these new signings coming in has been really cool to see. So bringing in the Motor City Machine Guns is not only going to help the NXT tag division for a little bit while they're there. Don't think they'll be there long, but it's going to give a shot in the arm to whatever tag division they go to afterwards, whether it's Raw or SmackDown. So all in all, I think it's a really smart move. And then last in WWE news, Def Rebel will supposedly be leaving WWE when his contract is up. and WWE will be working to work with more established mainstream artists more often for music and themes and things like that. And that is a huge win. That is like, if you want proof that the story that came out a couple weeks ago about Triple H like scrolling Twitter while he's backstage and the show is on, there you go, right there. The like Def Rebelification of theme music has got to stop. So it is cool. Like, obviously I don't want to cheer anyone losing their job, but I don't think the Def Rebel music has been the best fit over the year or two that they've been doing themes. I think about like Johnny Gargano's theme not being nearly what it was before, DIY as a tag team not being nearly what it was before, and just all the memes. Like, you just picture the memes, and it's easy to see why they would want to go a different direction with this. Who knows how mainstream it's going to be? Like, I don't think every song for everyone will be a licensed entrance music, but I'm really curious to see what they do if they go back to older composers, or if it is going to just be more, straightforward popular songs that they can just collaborate with the artists on. I really don't know, but I think this is a huge sign for, or a huge positive, I guess, in the way things are changing and going forward. I'll be curious to see if any of these wrestlers that are already there get their old themes back or get different versions of the themes, or if they keep the Def Rebel themes for now. Like, I'm so curious to see what the like impact of this is going to be, and like how fast it's going to be felt. And it's such a weird thing, but I'm very interested to see, because it feels like so many wrestlers have had their music Def Rebelified, and I think it's time for a change. I think it's time to try something different. And that is everything for WWE. So let me dive into AEW really quick, which obviously Dynamite was built around the fallout of All Out last weekend, and like I said, it had only been it's only been a week since AEW All Out, but it feels like so much has happened. All Out itself was a crazy show. I was gonna hop on and try to like record a short recap or reaction, but I just did not get the chance after the show over the weekend, and then the next day was football. I got lazy, I cannot lie. So did not react to everything from All Out, and I'm not going to rehash it now a week later, but obviously the two big moments from All Out, other than the crazy street fight between Willow and Chris Statlander, the incredible Will Ospreay Pac match, the great Bryan Danielson Jack Perry match, is what happened after. Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, and Pac turned on Bryan Danielson and Wheeler Yuta with this new faction that Jon Moxley has been working on with Marina Shafir, and they they proceeded to so Pac held back Wheeler Yuta, and Moxley choked Bryan Danielson out with a plastic bag, and the crowd was chanting like, "This is murder." It was crazy. And then after everyone was stunned from that, after the shockwaves of that had worn off, Hangman Page and Swerve Strickland came out and attempted to murder each other. Swerve had, or well, I guess I should say, Hangman had one of the ugliest looking bumps onto a cinder block that, it was so bad. And then they upped the ante even more with Hangman using some type of syringe to either numb or render him immobile, but to to incapacitate Swerve Strickland, and then he hit him square over the head with a steel chair. And I'm sure it was gimmicked. I'm sure it was, not as hard as it looked or sounded, but if you find like the fan recorded videos from the crowd, like the sound is like a gunshot. It is crazy. So Hangman Page emerges victorious from the steel cage, but the shot at the end of the show where he's looking like kind of like traumatized almost, like I had to do this I had to get to this level to beat him and to do this. Like, man, it was really interesting. It laid so many seeds. I've seen so many think pieces about if AEW went too far with this show, with all of the violence and all of the, quote unquote attempted murders, and I don't know. Like, obviously that type of stuff isn't always for me all the time. I'm not someone that really enjoys, death matches every day of the week. Like, that's not my idea of wrestling, and that's probably partly because I've grown up in, the bubble of WWE. Like, that's just what I've experienced so often. Like, I guess there's a time and a place for a crazy hardcore match. I'm not gonna, say anyone enjoying that is wrong. Like, I enjoy those matches every once in a while, but so I feel like I'm not the person to talk about this, but like, AEW was started as an alternative to WWE for wrestling and big wrestling companies in America. And I think that something like this, where AEW has like the whiplash of hosting All In, 50,000 people, which kind of feels like an AEW WrestleMania. It's at Wembley Stadium. You have the huge moments, the giant fireworks, the great ending with Bryan Danielson holding the title with his family and friends in the ring with him. Um, you have all of that, and then 2 weeks later, this, which is like the Empire Strikes Back of pay-per-views in terms of just how bleak all of it was. And to me, I think that's going to be where AEW's strengths lie. Is yes, we have the capability of doing these shows, but we also have the fearlessness of doing these types of shows. And even if you don't like all of that stuff, there was still things to enjoy. Like the Young Bucks, Claudio and Wheeler match was really good, and like I said, Pac and Will Ospreay were incredible. And those weren't this level of violence. I think there's always going to be that line where AEW will, maybe the whole show won't have that tone to it like this one did, but they're going to always have that. And I think that's going to be something that, gives them the distinction of being that alternative to WWE. But where I see it being kind of iffy is, you run the risk of people thinking like you're just doing this for shock value. And so I think the importance of something like All In being so relatively straightforward and feel good is to show that, these things are going to have a purpose moving forward. I think a very legitimate early complaint of AEW or towards AEW was that, they did a lot of things for shock value, like whether it was, someone like even like Cody Rhodes getting busted open or Moxley getting busted open in every match, or like you think about all the weird spots like the skewers and the forks and everything that they've done. There were times where it just felt like it was just doing it just to do it. And I think the thing that made All Out so jarring to people is that everything had like intentions behind it, everything had story behind it and stakes, and that made it all so much more hard to take. Like, you think about the Chris Statlander Willow street fight, and like that had some pretty gnarly stuff in it, but it never like veered into unwatchable. Whereas like Swerve and Hangman, like they've built that story so much around hate that like it's uncomfortable to watch at times. And then Moxley turning on Danielson, it's uncomfortable to watch. Like, yes, obviously because the act is shocking. You're seeing someone choke someone out with a plastic bag, but it has that stake behind it. It has that heart and that storytelling in it. So I think if that's what they're going to be doing, then it's going to be probably more polarizing, controversial. I don't know if this is just a blip to kind of announce like hey, I know we have a new TV deal announcing soon, but don't worry, we are here to stay as the AEW that you know and love. But whatever it was, I really do think what made it all so impactful was how much story was into basically all of it. So then we get to AEW Dynamite this last week, where we get a little bit of background and explanation as to what Jon Moxley is doing and why he did what he did to Bryan Danielson. And it's pre-recorded, but he cuts like one of the promos of his career with this, where he talks about how Bryan Danielson is too naive, he's too good-hearted, he's too stubborn to do what needs to be done because the egos and all in AEW are running wild and they need to be taken care of. And Moxley is the person to take care of it, and Danielson isn't. And yeah, and he didn't say William Regal, but he hinted at him a ton in the formation of the Blackpool Combat Club. And he said, yeah, the boss always liked Bryan more, but he told me that we were too alike. Like, we were just, we're dogs. We're out here. We do what needs to be done. We're not good. We're not bad. And he said, Bryan doesn't have the heart for it. And, I hate that I had to do it, but we tried it his way. We tried to be nice and we tried to be cool. And all that's happened is the egos have gotten worse. So diplomacy is over. And he actually said, I choose war. Let's go. And then he just got in the back of a Jeep, which was kind of a weird, like, transition out. And like just, I think it was supposed to be right after All Out and him betraying Danielson. He'd like them leaving the arena, but the visual of him just climbing in the back of a Jeep was kind of funny after such an impassioned promo. But it really was a great mission statement for him and this group. And after a couple vague weeks, it really set everything out nicely. And then we got a payoff of the last couple of weeks where he's been looking for Darby Allin, where Mox and Allin have this promo battle where they go back and forth, and Moxley just wants Darby Allin to hand him number one title shot that he earned winning one of the gauntlet matches a few months ago for AEW Grand Slam. Darby Allin says no way, and they agree to a match with the number one contender spot on the line at Grand Slam, which is going to be incredible. The whole build around this in this segment was Mox basically saying, you weren't ready then, you weren't ready the last opportunity you got, and you're not ready now, so give me it and get out of the way, because you're great, but you're not ready. You don't have what it takes to do what needs to be done like I do. And it was really like interesting, good stuff. And I don't know if it's just the renewed purpose or the focus of this story or what it is about it, but Moxley is like dialed in right now, and it's awesome to see, because that dude is in like incredible shape right now. He looks unbelievable. He's got that intensity, he's got that fire, and more importantly than any of that, got that unpredictableness. He's got that unpredictability to him and in his eyes that I think makes him such a unique and important wrestler in AEW. Is like he can go do anything, and the combination of everything that he has, he's going to be convincing in anything he does. So really enjoyed all of that. And then we got a little bit of a weird logic thing. Later in the night, Nigel McGuinness came to the ring and announced that he had been granted a title opportunity against Bryan Danielson at Grand Slam if Bryan Danielson is medically cleared to compete. And that's awesome, because Nigel McGuinness is like the number one Bryan Danielson hater. He's had so many moments on commentary running down Bryan Danielson. The two of them have not wrestled in like 15 years. And if they do wrestle, it will be 15 years just about to the day. I think the last match they had was like September 26th or 25th. And then the match at Grand Slam is going to be either the 25th or the 26th. So really interesting that it would line up that way. Who knows if that's intentional or if it's just how it worked out, but really fortunate timing. But it's interesting, and the reason I say there was some complaints about the logic in the booking is part of what Moxley said in his promo to Darby Allin about give him the title shot was that Bryan Danielson is not cleared to compete after what happened to him at Jon Moxley's hands. And so if Darby Allin wants a match, it has to be against Moxley at Grand Slam. So the whole thing was kind of predicated around, well, Bryan can't wrestle, so let's wrestle and we'll determine the number one contender. And then, like, an hour or less later, Nigel McGuinness comes out and says, Grand Slam, me and Bryan Danielson. And so I think people were upset at that, and they haven't really done a lot yet to go into, like, maybe Nigel McGuinness saw this as an opportunity to come in and pick the bones and really get one over on the dude he hates, Bryan Danielson. Maybe it's something that's going to be explored in the next couple weeks, building to it with whatever's going on with him, with Bryan being cleared. It could be anything. And so I tend to be someone who, like, I'll wait and see. I'll watch and see what happens, and I'll go from there. I try not to be someone that runs to a quick decision or a quick judgment, especially with something like as so rapidly shifting as wrestling. I learned that a long time ago. It's just not worth getting that mad about or getting that upset about in the short term, because things just change so fast. So we'll see what happens. But honestly, like, Darby Allin, Jon Moxley, with this new violent edge to Moxley again, and Darby Allin's penchant for doing absolutely insane things, kind of sets the stage for that to be an incredible match. And then also Nigel McGuinness, Bryan Danielson, like, who doesn't want to see that? If you don't want to see that, you want to, rather focus on logic holes and things, like, that's okay, but you're going to be missing out on something that is sure to be very special, because those guys, they had a tremendous match 15 years ago, and they've only gotten better and smarter and more psychological. Nigel just had his big return at All Out, or at All In, in the gauntlet match there and looked incredible for someone who had not wrestled in so long. So I really do appreciate what it looks like they're putting together for Grand Slam. It is one of those shows that they try to make feel like more than just a regular weekly episode of Dynamite. So I'm excited to see it. And then lastly, AEW Dynamite featured a tag team casino gauntlet match, and the winners got an opportunity to take on the Young Bucks at Grand Slam. And the AEW Tag Team division has been a point of conversation for a while because it has felt like teams have been kind of like sat at the wayside in favor of a rotation of FTR, the Young Bucks, and the Acclaimed. And people were wanting to see new teams, fresh matchups, new teams kind of get the opportunity to step up and to prove themselves. And they do this gauntlet match. There was really a lot of teams involved. It went on longer than I think a lot of the normal gauntlet matches go. It felt like there were more teams coming out than normally wrestlers would for these. But ultimately, it was won by the team of Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher, who will now challenge for the tag titles. And I did enjoy the way they brought Ospreay into this. They had Don Callis kind of, talk to him and call in the favor of the repaid favor that I guess he was owed for letting Ospreay out of the Callis family faction. And he was kind of like, hey, you've never lost in these gauntlet matches. You've won everyone you've entered. So, like, you and Kyle should enter because then you'll win because you just happen to win these. And I appreciate that logic. I appreciate that thought getting put into it because even honestly, something as small as that goes such a long way in like authenticity towards things. So I really appreciate that little nuance to it and just that moment of bringing that up, those two things. Hey, you owe me a favor. Also, you've never lost, so why wouldn't I be asking you? I really appreciate that. And obviously, Ospreay and Fletcher are longtime friends that go back to New Japan with United Empire. I almost said Aussie Open. United Empire. And so they work well together. The finish for this match was incredible, where Ospreay came out of nowhere to hit a hidden blade to give Fletcher the pinfall. It was an awesome finishing sequence, like the last 30 seconds of this match. I'm excited to see what the Young Bucks and what these guys can do because I think that's a fresh pair. So a nice matchup, and it's something different, I think, from what the normal Young Buck matches have been recently that has kind of led to this lull almost a bit. But I just don't think... Obviously, the tag team division has been a point of conversation, especially since the trios titles were established. But I don't think running a gauntlet match like this and showing off tons of teams and then having two single stars team up and win it is the way to fix the division. I don't think they're going to beat the Young Bucks for the titles. I think this is probably going to be used as what facilitates them fully turning on Ospreay, like the Don Callis family, and whether it's Fletcher or Takeshita or whoever ends up taking the international title off of Ospreay, I think it is going to come out of this, whatever this story is heading towards. I just don't know necessarily if you needed the tag titles and the gauntlet match and all of this to do it, because now there's all these teams that entered and lost to the team that isn't really a team right now. The Outrunners got the biggest ovation of the night, and I don't think anyone thought they were gonna, win and challenge for the titles. But Private Party wasn't even a part of the match. They were in a 6-man tag earlier in the night and got absolutely destroyed. So it just feels like there's so many talented tag teams there, and right now, any one of them could put on a good match, but if you put them against the Young Bucks, no one's going to think they can win. You look at Top Flight, you look at the Righteous, you look at the Kingdom, the Undisputed Kingdom with Roddy Strong and those guys. You look at any of those teams, and yeah, they're a lot of fun to watch and they have good matches, but I don't believe Top Flight's not beating the Young Bucks right now, and if it happened, people would be blown away. And I don't think that's necessarily blown away oh man, I'm so happy they finally did it. It's more man, the Top Flight guys have been booked pretty poorly. They lose every match and they're never in the hunt. That's crazy that they won. So I just feel good showings in matches aren't always hey, they looked good in defeat, so it's okay. They're coming. They're next up. Like, it just kind of feels like sometimes you need those things for credibility. Like, you think about what the Gauntlet match did for Kofi Kingston in that Kofi Mania run a few years ago. Like, he had that incredible showing in the Gauntlet match. It gave that great moment where the Usos backed out and like forfeited um, against Big E and Xavier Woods. Like, you think about all of the different things that they did and the way that you can use a Gauntlet match to build sympathy for a team. And you start a team at one and have them run the whole gauntlet. I think that's probably partly a flaw with AEW's system of it being a one fall win, like a one fall win. When you have all these teams coming out rather than doing a normal elimination style gauntlet match, which I kind of thought this was going to be. I was surprised that it was a tag match. Then I turned on the TV, like I went back from commercial, and it was just like, hey, here's like 10 people in the ring at once right now. So I was a little surprised at that. I'm not disappointed. I think that, like I said, I think Ospreay, Fletcher, and the Young Bucks are going to have an incredible match. I really feel like there was a missed opportunity here to take a young team and kind of start to push them towards that next level and to kind of continue to build new contenders and new top teams in the division, which is what they ultimately need. So we will see. Like I said, Grand Slam is probably going to be an awesome match anyways, and it's probably going to be more about what happens after with Ospreay and the Don Callis family than anything else. I just kind of wish it hadn't been the tag team division that kind of like was the springboard for this, I guess. And honestly, I think that's everything. I think that's everything I wanted to talk about today. So like I said earlier, if I missed anything, if there's anything you would like to shout out, please hit the comments, send in an email, anything you would like, and I will get to it next week. Once again, surprisingly, no pay-per-view or PLE next week. It feels like we've been in a run of so many, but next week we'll be back covering everything, any breaking news, anything like that. So please subscribe, follow along. I appreciate anyone watching. Hope everyone has a great weekend, and I'll see you next week.